You're tuning into Shoptalk TV. Up next, we have a conversation with Lee Manheim-Levine, who is the president for North America of Coach. Lee is joined in conversation by Phil Waba, senior reporter at Fortune.
Lee, thank you for joining us
Thank you for
at
having
Shoptalk
me.
TV. So before we dive into All Matters Coach, has anything grabbed you at the show and conference in terms of insights?
So I actually just arrived, unfortunately. It's my first time at Shop Talk, so excited to, after this, spend some time walking around and hearing what's happening.
Well, let's talk about Coach, specifically stores.
Okay.
So let's talk about your physical stores. So let's start with a 30,000 foot question. What is the role of a store for Coach now versus 5 years ago? What is different?
Sure. The role of the store is incredibly important. I would say maybe more so now than 5 years ago. Our focus is really trying to build emotional connections with our consumers. And I think in the store with our staff, I would say our staff is our secret sauce. We can really build those connections more so than, you can in an online experience. 5 years ago, I think the customer took for granted that they could be online and they could be in stores. Then during COVID, everyone was stuck at home and we were forced to shop online. And we see this resurgence now of especially young people wanting to go back to the mall with their friends in real life and have a in real life experience. So I think again, the role of the store is to provide that experiential element for them and drive that emotional connection to the consumer, which again, I think our staff is fantastic at.
But what you've said about Coach, is it any different than what other retailers could say? Or is there something, about what you just said that's particularly true for Coach?
I mean, I would say that our staff is one of the best in the business. I do think that's a differentiator for us. We're very welcoming. We hear from our customers all the time that we're very welcoming. We create that engaging experience, and it's not about intimidation, about status. Some other brands I think might have that, and we are really just welcoming. We hear all the time customers who tell our staff that they just want to come hang out. And actually during COVID, we heard stories where associates were still communicating with their customers even though they couldn't come into the store because they had made genuine friendships. I would say the other thing is we have been testing some new experiential concepts more recently in our physical environment to drive that engagement and that experiential element. So two that come to mind specifically are hospitality. So we've recently entered the food and beverage business. So in last year, we opened our first Coach restaurant and coffee shop in Indonesia, actually.
Oh, wow.
And then a couple of months ago, we opened our first two in North America. So one in our Jersey Shore outlet center and one in the Domain in Austin, Texas. It's been really exciting to see the customers interacting with our brand in a new way. They have been really successful and they are in our actual store. So you can experience the coffee, walk into the store, experience our product. So that's been interesting and something that we will look to scale. The other thing we've tried is what we call Coach Play. So it is a different kind of experiential store built to engage the five senses, more tactile, more visual, some more color, more localized elements. And again, we've seen incredible success in those locations. There's a handful of them globally, and we're not necessarily looking to scale that full concept, but using it to learn what engages customers and then looking to scale elements of those into our broader fleet.
And is the idea of hospitality to get people to stay in those stores longer, or is it just to,
increased dwell time, increased frequency? People need to buy a coffee more often than they need to buy a handbag, despite, my druthers. And so now there's a reason to come back again and experience and spend time with us beyond necessarily having to purchase, a handbag or a leather good. Yeah.
Okay. And in this day of e-commerce, how do stores build loyalty?
I come back to building that emotional connection with the customer. That again, you can provide amazing visuals and a seamless experience online. I think that's table stakes today. But I think in the stores, it is, you have a reason to go see your associate and see things in real life. And again, like I said, that social experience, I think, which it is today, especially for the younger consumer. But we live in an omni world, and the experience has to be consistent. It has to be seamless, has to be easy for the consumer. I think, like I said, they expect that. And so we need to make sure we're delivering that consistency.
So remind the viewers how many stores you have in North America.
Yes, we have about 350 stores in our
350 stores.
Yeah.
And that is fewer than there might have been 10 years ago.
That's correct.
And so the idea has been to have fewer stores but make them more special, or?
I mean, we're always making the best decision for our business and our consumer. So for various reasons, we've closed stores over time. I think we want to make sure we have a clear presence in key markets, but we also have incredible websites. So I think where there was maybe more pressure 10 years ago on just brick and mortar, now we have both sides of our business. So we can make sure we're capturing customers wherever they live.
I'll come back to the interplay with e-commerce, but I live in New York City, and the Coach store that I see the most often is the one on Fifth with the gigantic dinosaurs. Her name Lexi?
Rexy.
Rexy. Right, of course, T-Rex. And she's adorable, and it is fun, and you have the whole I guess what would you call that? The sort of the conveyor belt that goes through.
Belt,
yeah.
Yes.
How do you find the balance between having fun things, but not having them be gimmicky?
Yeah.
And then also, you can't give every store the same love that you give the store on Fifth Avenue. So what's your philosophy on the fun stuff not being too gimmicky, but also making sure that the non-flagship stores also get a lot of love?
Yeah. We actually tested and learned a lot on this during COVID, because typically we had done all the fun stuff in what we would have called our flagships that were highly tourist driven. And then the world changed. And what we realized is we wanted to create those engaging elements where our customer lived and worked, which was a little different than I think how everyone had traditionally thought about it in the past. So yes, the store on Fifth Avenue is our global flagship. So we will always create interesting brand expressions in that store. But we tested things in Houston Galleria, in Dallas North Park, in Chicago. So still big stores, but where our customers actually live. And we found that successfully, again, drove frequency of visit, was interesting for them. I think in some ways they appreciated it more because it was more unique in those markets. But you're right, it has to provide a solution for the customer or an emotional connection. And a couple of years ago, we created our new evolved brand positioning that we call expressive luxury.
Yeah.
And it's the idea that we want to help the customer express their authentic self. So there might be some sort of expression of that we'll do in the store. So in one of our Play stores, for example, in Salt Lake City, Utah, we have a selfie wall, and the associates take Polaroids of the customers if they want it, and then they get posted on the mirror. And then they have a moment to express themselves and what they're trying on. It creates a community. So it's tied to our positioning and our purpose, which is courage to be real. So I think, to your point, there needs to be a reason, either connected to the brand heritage, connected to the brand mascot like Rexy, or connected to the emotion we're trying to evoke, so that it doesn't feel gimmicky. Yeah.
Stores in this world of omnichannel, for a lot of retailers, have played a crucial role in supporting e-commerce. But you also don't want the store to become a fulfillment center or a mini warehouse. And where has Coach landed on that?
Yeah. We are an omni business. So we look at our business from an omni point of view. Our inventory is omni, because we want to have the inventory where the customer is, and we can't necessarily predict that perfectly. And our associates are also trained what's online, how, the customers come in so often with a picture, I want this. They already have it on their phone. They saw it on TikTok. They saw it on our site. So the associates have to be very knowledgeable and prepared to speak to that. We can fulfill orders for our customer cross channel. So again, back to that seamless journey and creating, making it as easy as possible for the consumer. So that's what I would say. I think it's been successful, and I think the businesses support each other and feed off each other in a way that has been additive to the overall business.
Okay. There was a time Coach was testing men's stores and all that. What's your philosophy now? Is it just easier to have dual gender stores everywhere, and then
We found that it's easier to have dual gender stores everywhere. In part because people are shopping together. So if you're coming in with your partner or friend, we want everyone to be able to shop. Also, the lines of what is a men's bag and what is a women's bag is just different today. And I think we see genders shopping, across all the time. And we want to make that easy too. So, we want you to feel happy in your part of the store. We also want you to feel, happy to go to a different area. And it doesn't matter how we label the bag in the back end. We want you to be able to buy whatever it is that you want.
Yeah, I mean, why should one gender have all the fun, right? Despite the headlines today, I mean, there's more gender fluidity, and that's just reality. Now, of course, one of the Coach has just really remade itself in the last decade. It hit a bit of a difficult period, and now it's thriving objectively. And a lot of that has to do with more apparel and really becoming convincing as a seller of clothing. How does that affect how you display your wares? Because it's one thing to have handbags and wallets, but now you also have, do you have mannequins for the fabulous shearling coats?
Yes, yeah. We are a lifestyle brand. We offer, leather goods is still our core and will always be. But we have footwear, we have ready to wear, as you said, outerwear. So yes, we have mannequins in store. We recently actually launched a new sneaker called the Soho sneaker. And if you go to our stores right now, you'll see our sneakers in the window. It's on the front table. So that's different than what we've done historically, because we want the customer to know that we have this category, we have this item. So yes, we have changed a bit our in-store experience to enable that, and online, making sure we have good on-figure images, all the right product information to give the customer so that they're able to purchase those things online as well.
One recurring theme at the conference, and also just generally, is Gen Z. It almost sometimes feels like they're presented as a different species. They're human beings, but they're younger human beings, and I'm sure a lot of us were just like them when we were their age, but
I feel very old these days. With all the Gen Z talk.
Well, and I think a lot of what we hear about Gen Z, people are saying the same thing about millennials 10, 15 years ago, young people. But what do they want from a store, and how do you know?
Yeah. So we have spent a lot of time with the Gen Z. We have refined our target customer in the last couple of years to be what we call the timeless Gen Z. And in order to know what they want, we just spent a lot of time with them. We did ethnographic research. We went to their homes. We looked in their closets. We went shopping with them. So it wasn't just a focus group. We spent hours at a time with these individuals to really understand what is it that they want. And they want brands that mirror their values. They want to have that emotional connection with the brand. They want to be able to go into a store and feel comfortable and be able to ask the team questions and try things on. And we have continued to do that research. We're doing it around the globe because it might change again. And soon we're going to be talking about Gen Alpha.
Yes.
So we need to always have our ear to the ground and be listening to them and really understand what it is that they want. But they are enjoying coming into stores. I would say one of the big differences, they know a lot. They've seen our brand many times before they walk in. And like I said before, they often have a picture of the thing that they want or they think they want. And then it's our team's job to either get them that, show them something else, add on, and provide that experiential piece.
Do they love the heritage aspect of the brand, and then
Some of them really
yeah,
do. We have a Coach Originals collection in the store right now, all inspired by our archival pieces, and it is resonating with the Gen Z consumer. I think they love to go vintage shopping, and I think they recognize a lot of those styles. A lot of their moms or aunts or older sisters, have had Coach, and so I think there's this positive nostalgia
yeah.
that resonates with them.
What about frequency of new items? You know, there's a stereotype that they
Mhm.
don't have the best attention span, but I actually think every generation now has a shorter attention span than it did,
Yes.
30 years ago. Do you need to surprise them with new stuff more often, that generation, or?
We haven't found that. We are really focused on driving new customer acquisition, so we don't need to change our product so often. I think the repeat purchase, we have plenty in our arsenal to drive
Yeah.
repeat purchase without having to introduce something new all the time. We have actually found that some of our top sellers are what we call our icons. So Tabby, as an
Yeah.
example, is one of our best-selling bags. She's not new, and we introduce new colors or new materials, but it's still Tabby, and we want our customer to recognize that. And she might come and buy a new version or a new size, but no, we haven't found that the younger consumer needs more frequency of delivery than we had prior.
And how about the factory stores? Is that in your purview?
Yes.
So I imagine the factory stores play a good role in getting people interested in the brand
Yes.
when their means are maybe more limited, when you're 19, 20, of course,
Yes.
compared to when you're 30, 40. So how is that the experience for the Gen Z shoppers different at the factory versus
Yeah.
the full price?
Everything I've spoken about so far is channel agnostic. I mean, again, driving that emotional connection, driving that authenticity, having our associates be able to, help the consumers express themselves. I mean, the velocity in factory is obviously different than in full price. And we do see high Gen Z acquisition in both channels. Interestingly, we saw the Gen Z coming into our outlet stores with pictures of Tabby. And Tabby is a $450 plus
Yeah.
bag. So we thought, maybe we should try putting some Tabbies in outlet. And we did. And we sold them. And now we have Tabby, so full price product in over 200 outlet stores globally. And these young customers are buying these bags at $450 plus. Now, if they don't want that, we also have amazing product at 150 or whatever price
Yeah.
value it is that they're looking for. But that was interesting finding in the factory stores
Right.
specifically.
And of course, you have to be careful not to blend the two channels too much, but then the factory stores can give somebody a taste of
Yeah,
the
and
full
we
price,
and we
right?
want, we want the physical environment and the associate, how you're treated, what that experience is, to really be the same. We want you to feel elevated no matter where you're shopping, and the money you spend is relative. We have stories of customers who, they're buying their first real luxury handbag, and they've saved up for months for that $150 bag. So the AUR and perception of elevation luxury is relative.
How about the vintage market? Um, Coach has a very long history, which um, can be a big asset. So, how do you touch the interest in the secondary market in terms of winning these shoppers? I mean, I can
Yeah.
imagine some of these youngsters who don't mind spending a lot of money for them on a
Yeah.
bag. They're thinking, well, this is quality and will last.
Yeah.
So, tell me a little bit about how
Yeah.
vintage plays in.
So as I said before, we just launched a Coach Originals
Yeah.
collection that is entirely inspired by vintage bags. So we've been doing, that's probably how we're doing it the most, like reissuing some of our vintage products. We reissued one called Swing Zip last year, and it sold out like in an hour online, and now we continue to have these drops of product, and I think it is resonating with the customers who would have gone vintage shopping historically. And I think Stuart uses our archive very frequently as he's looking for inspiration and developing new product.
How often do you go in the archives?
I wish I went more. I haven't been in a couple of years, to be honest, but it is so cool. I mean, there's product from the 60s, 70s. Yeah, I wish I had more time to go.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of fun things in your archives. The handbags for flight attendants back in the day,
Yes.
when you could still call them stewardesses.
Yeah.
And it's, anyway, it's um, I mean, you're reaching really across generations and across geographies, across income ability. So your store has to still be pretty targeted, but at the same time broad enough to
Yeah.
reach your whole constituency,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. How do you make stores interesting in a day and age where people have seen everything everywhere? You know, you see a lot of
Yes.
in the upscale and luxury world things that are okay, but I feel like people have seen a lot. So
Yes.
what's the key to really dazzling people?
I mean, I go back to our people and our product. I mean, you can build a beautiful store. And again, I think there's some expectation that the store environment is pleasant to be in. And I do think some of it is the experiential piece, offering the coffee shop and you know, brownie that looks like a tabby. I mean, that stuff is
Yeah.
fun, but I agree. I mean, there's a lot of brands have done different things like that. I think what sets us apart is our incredible product and our incredible staff. And you want to come back to spend that time with them, and because we represent the values that our customer cares about. I think that goes beyond beautiful architecture or amazing VM. That's what I would say.
Okay, well, no rest for you. Keep your stores interesting. Thank you so much, Lee, for
Thank
joining
you.
us.
Thank you.